Hi, Fred here. We're going to talk about culture today in Module 2, Video 2. Some of you are saying, I don't believe in culture. I hear this all the time from people. I don't think it matters. Well, it matters to big companies who are really successful, like Zappos, that grew from 0 to $1 billion in 10 years, and then the recession hit in 2007, and boy, they were really struggling. And in 3 more years, they got to $2 billion. Why? Because they had a really strong culture where they defined it, everybody understood it, and they moved right on through and were successful in spite of what was happening in the economy. I'll tell you something really simple. People are how you scale your business. People are how you scale or fail. In other words, you can grow and succeed with great people or fail because you don't have great people. That happens when you create a great culture. I'll give you another example of a really successful business that you've probably heard of called Apple. They have a very specific training format for their retail stores. Now, if you know about their retail stores, they earn more per square foot than any other store in any shopping area anywhere. They are the most successful store. They earn the most of any store. The store on Fifth Avenue, for example, in New York, earns $1 million a day. That's a lot of revenue. And they train their people a very specific way. And it's an acronym that they use, and it's APPLE is the acronym. And I'm going to read it to you so you know exactly what it is, and then I'm going to emphasize each point. The first A is approach customers with a warm, personalized greeting. Kind of a great way to start a business, isn't it? Start a relationship. You're going to find that all of these things will apply to a dental practice very nicely. The second is probe politely to understand all the customer's needs. Wouldn't you want that to be how your business worked as well? Wouldn't you want to understand what your patients needed? Present a solution for the customer to take home that day. You want your patients to accept treatment. You want them to leave healthier, feeling better. Maybe out of pain, for example. That's what you're going to want to be doing in the practice, presenting a solution for them to take home that day. Listen and resolve for any issues or concerns. This is important. Apple's figured out that this is important before somebody leaves. They want to know that they've addressed any issues or concerns. You probably want to do the same. And finally, end with a fond farewell and an invitation to return. What a lovely thing. Not just a fond farewell, which is a wonderful thing, and I'm going to talk about in later videos how important that last moment is with a patient, but an invitation to return. Can't wait to see you again. Hope to see you in a few months. Again, when we clean your teeth, or whatever it is. Let them know you're looking forward to seeing them when they return, reminding them that they have to return. This is culture. This is clearly defining what you do. And it doesn't just happen. It will happen, but not the way you want. But a real practice culture takes work. I use the example, it's not AstroTurf. You don't just put it down and say, this is our culture and this is the way it's going to be from now on. Culture is a garden that you tend lovingly, carefully, attentively, and you refine it all the time, and everybody's responsible for what happens in that garden. But what exactly is culture? A lot of people are very confused about, they hear the word all the time, but they don't know what it means. What are we talking about? It comes down to these simple thoughts, how we treat each other, the behavior and the language that we use with each other, what we expect from one another, and the way we hold each other accountable. There's another way of putting it is what we will and won't do for money, and what we will and won't do to each other. That's what culture is. And it's clearly defined. And how do you come up with it? That takes a little work too. You have to figure out your core values. This is what Zappos did. They had clearly delineated core values for their business. Just like Apple has clearly delineated the behavior in the retail store. But the core values are your fundamental beliefs, your guiding principles that help you make your decisions and govern your behavior in your business. How do you do that? How do you create those? Because it's important to remember that not everybody's core values are the same. They just have to be defined. There are several successful business models in dentistry that have varying and sometimes severely varying core values, but that helps to define them so that everybody knows what to do and what not to do, what's expected of them. So what I recommend you do is you sit down with the team, because this is all about the team. This whole module is about creating the remarkable team. Sit down with the team and say, we're going to decide what our core values are. Now, certainly the dentists involved are going to be driving this because it's them, that it's in their business, they get to decide. But at the same time, the whole team should be engaged. When we set up our core values in 1-800-DENTIST, now my partner and I had core values, but we didn't call them that. And they were very simple, which was we wanted a great place to go to work every day. We wanted everybody to win, the patients, the dentists, our employees, and us. And we wanted to make money. But it was always in that order. Money didn't supersede the others. And so we created a great place to work, and everybody defended it. But eventually we sat down and said, all right, let's get clearer about the core values and let's define them more specifically so that everybody really has the rules of the road, so to speak. And so what you do is you just come up with words that really define how you want to treat people, how you want to behave towards each other, how you want to behave towards business in general, how you want to react when things happen. And it comes out in really interesting terminology when people start to talk about it. So sit down and really think about what your values are as a person, and then see how they fit with your values in the business, and then define them. And let me give you some examples that we used in our business, and you can use and come up with your own. But one, for example, is be contagiously positive. Not just positive, contagiously positive, so that people can't resist being positive too. You are so positive. Here's another one. Treat everyone with dignity. This is important, I think, in a business as personal as dentistry, where people feel so anxious, so vulnerable. And sometimes in healthcare, they're not getting treated with dignity. Sometimes when they don't have enough money for treatment, they're not treated with dignity wherever they go in life. So this can be a core value for you. How about listen closely? Don't just listen. Listen without thinking about what you're going to say next, without interrupting. It's hard. But if that's a core value, the impact is tremendous. Here's one, and this is one that we live by in my business, which is integrity trumps profits. In other words, making money will never compromise our integrity. And this is what happens to a lot of businesses as they get bigger and bigger and bigger. Eventually, profit is all that matters. They go public, and it's just about making dividends for the shareholders. And so what if we lay 10,000 people off? That was not us. I don't think that's you. I think you want to do the right thing, no matter the impact on your income. You don't want to go broke, but you want to act with integrity. But this is a suggestion. How about embrace change and learning? Really important in this day and age when we're in a mode of accelerated change for the rest of our lives. embracing change and embracing learning. Lifelong learning. That's going to make a huge difference. And if this is a value, a core value of the business, it can make a huge difference because it's defined. You know what you're going to do when the situation comes up. You say, oh, we got to embrace change. We can't avoid it. Hey, we need to learn something new. We need to let go of what we believed before. We need to accept some changes. We need to learn how to what to do next. And sometimes you can define things maybe that you're not going to publish to the public or to your patients like this. And we used it as the customer, but the patient isn't always right. Okay, we defined it as the customer isn't always right. The customer didn't get to abuse our employees. And when you do that, when the employees know that you will defend them and that the customer doesn't always win in every interaction, that doesn't always make the employee bad when something goes wrong, that sometimes, hey, that patient doesn't belong in the practice. Sometimes that patient is not a good person or is not behaving in an acceptable way, which is more often the case when you're defending your employee. When you do that, when you say the employee is still more important than the patient, they appreciate that. That's a culture they can defend. And they'll do it, actually, they'll do things more to accommodate the patients because they know you got their back. It's a big deal. Now, one of the things that happens in a culture is you have to decide about who's there and what they bring to the place. And what I've found after years and years of interacting with people and hiring people and letting people go is that there are people with a great work attitude and a great life attitude, and there are people who don't have that. It's a choice. It is not what happened to them or what happens to them. It's how they choose to react to what happens to them. People with a good, healthy, positive attitude react to everything in a healthy, positive way. Those are the only people you can have on your team. That's the only environment you want to create in your practice. That's the only culture you could possibly tolerate and expect to grow on a steady basis into the next 2 decades. It's important to understand that there's all these people out there who've had terrible things happen to them, and they're wonderful, positive people, and a whole bunch of people that everything's been handed to them. They were born with a platinum spoon in their mouth, and they're depressed, drug abusing, complaining and criticizing everything. It's a choice they made. Find those people that choose the best attitude. Those are the only people that you're going to want. In the next video, we're going to talk about hiring. But this is baseline for who you want in your place. And I'll give you an example. I was in Bangkok several years ago, and I was walking down this very busy street in the morning, and there were these workers who had opened a storm drain. And because it was clogged, it was a big storm drain, and there's 4 or 5 guys working in it, and they're all standing there in shorts and t-shirts with these poles and brooms and stuff like that. And they lifted the concrete lid, this big 6-foot lid, off of the storm drain, and it was clogged, and it was full of this filthy water. And one guy kicks off his flip-flops and climbs into the water up to his waist and starts cleaning out the drain. And I looked at that and I went, wow, that is not a very good job. But what was fascinating and memorable was he was smiling. He was laughing and joking with his friends. I mean, the water was seeping up his shirt, and this water was brown with stuff floating in it. And he had a good attitude. And I thought, you know what? There is no job in America where you can have a bad attitude. There's certainly no job in a dental practice that you deserve to have a bad attitude, that's merited. It's unacceptable. And so When you've got core values set up and you're creating culture, one of the things you want to be doing is having clear expectations for your team. This is where a lot of us fall down, is we don't say what we expect from the employee for this great place to work. Spell it out. Say, I want you to be on time. I want you to be happy. I want you to be helpful. I want you to contribute no matter what, not just do your job, but if you see something else that needs being done, do it. Lay out your expectations for people in their individual jobs and overall in the business. Don't expect them to come up with that stuff, because they'll come up with their own and they'll be easier than maybe what you came up with. Be clear about that. One of the biggest mistakes I made in my business was I gave them a great place to work and I hoped that they would do what I expected them to do. Guess what? I was wrong. I had to clearly define my expectations. It took me years to figure it out. Don't spend years figuring it out. Now, once you've got a great culture, one of the most important things to do to reinforce that culture is celebrate with your employees. Celebrate all sorts of occasions, anniversaries that they've worked there, achievements that the team has done. Go out and celebrate. Take an afternoon off and go bowling or have a long brunch or something like that to celebrate. Do these things that acknowledge what people have achieved in the practice and what they've created as a business because they've defended this culture. Because there are going to be some great results. But you want to celebrate particularly momentous occasions where they've achieved something, or they've been in the practice for 10 or 15 or 20 years, or they've found 10 new patients themselves that month. Something like that. Something that's important to celebrate, and everybody appreciates the acknowledgement. Of course, when I talk about social media, I'm going to talk about how important it is to have done this stuff and taken some pictures and video of it. But it's important for the culture to do it, to create this sense that they are being acknowledged and appreciated for what they do. It's critical. And as I said, you don't have to create culture because it's going to create itself whether you do it or not. So I suggest creating one. I suggest working on one yourself, defining it clearly yourself, because otherwise it's going to be a culture that maybe you don't want. Like let's do the least required, the minimum culture. That's a common one that forms itself when there is no culture defined for people. Or you can have, we're a high-end, slow-paced boutique practice. We're not rushing anybody. We're doing great work in this boutique practice. It's not rushed, or you're not trying to get a lot of people through. Or you could say, we have a high-volume practice where we want to treat as many people as possible with the best clinical skills we have, but we want to be super efficient and treat the most people. And that's your culture. That's how you define it. Or it could be just a dictatorial environment where it's my way or the highway. Now, you didn't call it a culture, but that's what you created when you did that. So keep in mind, successful cultures are clearly defined. That's what you want to be doing. And one of the most important things to understand about your practice and any business, but particularly a dental practice, is something that Google learned the hard way. They did a tremendous amount of research on what made people better hires, what personality traits, all of these things. They studied 80 different factors, and they did a multi-million-dollar study on thousands and thousands of candidates. And what they found is they couldn't figure out anything specific. But the thing that made somebody work best is how well they worked as a member of a team. Think about that. because that's what you need. Your whole team functions by how well they work together. Everybody is a gear in this dental practice clockwork. Has to be working just right to make everything hum. You're moving from operatory to operatory and patient to patient all day long with all of these different tasks and responsibilities. Has to run efficiently. And the team is the only way that's achieved. Now let's think about this word team. Because a lot of people say, oh, my practice is like a family. I want to move you slightly away from that thinking. Because sometimes family is not the ideal choice, you know. Sometimes you don't want the idiot cousin in the business, you know what I mean? So think of it differently. Think of your practice, your team, more like a sports team, like an athletic team, hockey team, football team. What do? They put the people who work together as a team on that team. And the players that don't play well together, they get off the team. The player that doesn't perform at the same level that everybody else is performing at, they don't get to stay on the team, even if they're a family member. So think of your practice more as this team, and you're the team owner or the coach. You're trying to decide who the best players are at all time and help them work together, help them get better. Create a great team culture for them and know that you're going to support them with the best people. It's a big difference. It's an interesting distinction. But here's what happens when you create a great culture. You solve one of the biggest challenges in running any business. You attract great people. They find out about it. They can feel the vibe of this business when they walk in the door. Just like they can feel the vibe when they don't want to work someplace, even though the pay may be good. So culture attracts quality people. That's a powerful difference. Here's something else that a great culture does. It makes loyal employees who stay there a long time. And what does that do? It makes patients more comfortable because the people that they see are the same. They're familiar. As long as they're still remarkable people, that's great. And that's what you want. You want the same people there as much as possible, creating that remarkable experience, because that's going to make your patients accept treatment and recommend you. And that's what this is all about. That's what a remarkable practice is all about. And this remarkable team is foundational to greater and greater production and having a bulletproof practice no matter what happens in the future. So in essence, create a great culture, defend it, define it, and make it a great place to work, because that's where you got to go every day. Now we're going to talk about how you hire the right people in the next video. So stay tuned, apply these principles, use the worksheets, give me your comments, and become remarkable.